Sio Nagad, Dakwadona, Kara Cowan Watts. Hello, everyone. This is Kara Cowan Watts with Cherokee 411. We're here with the incredible Dr. Corey Steele. He is one of my favorite people across Cherokee lands, and he's going to tell us more about who he is as a Cherokee before we talk about his personal health journey and how we can all help him. And in between there, he's going to tell us who he is as a professional because that's its own incredible story. So, Corey, Dr. Steele, would you please tell us who you are? For those people that have not had the honor and blessing of meeting you and getting to know you, who are you as a Cherokee man? Who is your family? Who are your ancestors? Where were you raised? Give us our Cherokee context before we begin too much further.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Cowan Watts. Uh, Osis naga lehele Georgia Lukna. Ola dawadon giliskan ti Dr. Corey still dawadon. Ukuten Oklahoma de Gega. I say no Norman Janelata. Um, good morning, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. My name is Corey Still. I am the son of the late Stella Still Campbell and Daryl Campbell, the grandson of the late Betty and John Still, and the great grandson of the late Bessie and Drunken Thompson and Violet and Tobe Still. For me, I'm a member of the United Kituah Band of Cherokee Indians. Was born in Tahlequah. I'm currently 35 years old. Um, but I was born and raised in the Tahlequah and Stillwell areas, growing up there all my life in northeastern Oklahoma. I was heavily active, not only with the Kituahs, but with Cherokee Nation growing up, being raised by my great grandma, Bessie Thompson. I was raised as a first language speaker. Although now I've lost a lot of that. I still fairly understand it well, but I've lost a lot of that. She was a monolingual speaker, so in order for me to be able to communicate with her, we had to talk in Cherokee. But growing up, I grew up in a very traditional Cherokee household, learning from a very young age what it meant to be Gadua, and learning those values that's kind of guided where I've come today. And so for me, it's really been uh, a journey, I guess to say, because now I've really used that cultural foundation to guide me in my professional career. So I attended high school at Sequoia Indian Schools, and from there, I never really thought college was an option for me. But thankfully, and if you would have asked me then, I would have never dreamed of it. But I was a Gates Millennium Scholars recipient, and because of that, was able to go and do my bachelor's at the University of Oklahoma in Native American Studies with emphasis in Indian education, and then continued on and made a deal with my mentor that if I wanted to go into graduate school, I needed to go home for a little while. And so um, went back to Tahlequah to do my master's in higher ed leadership at Northeastern State. And then thought I was done, but was voluntold to do my doctorate. And was accepted into a number of institutions across the United States, but when I really thought about where I needed to go and the work that I needed to do, I decided to return back to the University of Oklahoma and finished my doctorate in educational leadership and policy studies. And so since then, I have worked in various positions, everywhere from director to interim vice presidents to all these different things in and around nonprofit and institutions in Oklahoma and elsewhere outside of Oklahoma for nonprofits, universities, which I'm currently working as a senior director of research and training for One Fire Associates LLC, which we're an evaluation and research company. So we work with tribal nations across the United States, but also all over North and South America, doing community work, grant work, program evaluations, and things like that. I also um, kind of do a side hustle, so I still teach. I teach for various institutions, so I do normally keep at least one or two classes. I think this semester, even with everything that went on, I was teaching three cl online classes. And then I also do a lot of community work. with the Katua Nation and with other tribal nations, especially here within the OKC metro area.
So, Corey, I'm going to tell you something. I guess I should have been telling you since the first time I met you, is that I just always assumed you were going to be one of our next chiefs or president of the United States because I saw in you, and you had to be 13, 14, 15 years old when I first met you. So, I mean, I'm like, but you are an incredible leader, and you have just always demonstrated that in every part of your life. And I just want you to know that. So I was honored when you said yes to doing this interview today because if people don't know you, they need to get to know you. You are important to all of us. So I take that. So, okay, tell us about your health journey. That's what we wanted to talk about today, but we can't talk about that without talking about who you are. And and this can't be the last time you're on with us either. You're going to have to come on again. So tell us, for the folks that don't know you, what you've been through and what that process is like and what happened recently, and then how we can support you, the ones that we do know.
Yeah. So in February of 2023, I was experiencing a lot of just health issues, abnormal health issues. And so uh, I ended up going to Chickasaw emergency room in Ada. Um, okay, I'm sorry. I did a pause because I've got to make a quick call. I am so sorry. They just 911 me.
It's
So
okay. Hey, we'll put it on pause for you, okay?
so roughly a little over 3 years ago, I was beginning to show symptoms, negative health symptoms and signs, which prompted me to go to Chickasaw Medical Center in Ada, which is the closest IHS facility for me here in Norman, with an emergency IHS center for me here in Norman. Um, Partially because with my own family background, there was a history of heart concerns and issues on my mother's side. And so we were always told growing up that while me and my siblings never showed any signs that we could potentially be affected by them later on in life. And so I went in thinking it could have been my heart. And so went in and they did a full cardiovascular workup, and everything was fine. And as we began to kind of go through, they asked if they could do additional testings. And so I agreed. And um, they had found that my liver had um, very, very, very severe bruising and scarring, and ultimately diagnosed me with cirrhosis. And this was a little bit uh, shocking to me because I only know cirrhosis um, primarily through alcoholism. And they began to ask me all these questions, and I was like, "Well, I'm not a heavy drinker." Um, and so we began looking for other resources. But at that time that they diagnosed me, um, it had been apparent that my liver had been in this state for initially they said roughly 25 years. So I was 33 at the time, 32 at the time. Um, and so they had estimated that I had actually started getting sick when I was roughly anywhere between 9 and 14 years old. And ultimately, it was probably about 6 months to a year later, somewhere, where they officially diagnosed me with autoimmune hepatitis. And they weren't sure exactly what caused it. They weren't sure exactly what triggered it, but they determined that I was asymptomatic until I was about 32. Um, and at that point in time, when they initially diagnosed me, they had given me roughly 2.5 years, 2.5, 3 years to 3 years um, before I would die. And so, hearing that news at the age of 32, there's a lot of things that you come to deal with fairly quickly. Because again, at this point, I've my whole life I've relied on IHS. Growing up, living in Oklahoma, that was our primary healthcare, and still is. That's where we went. That's where we went for everything. And so going through this process, I quickly learned that the only thing that could save my life, that could guarantee to save my life, would be a liver transplant. And unfortunately, that was one thing that IHS does not cover. So it kind of became the running joke amongst me and my friends and family that IHS would do everything to keep me alive, and IHS would do everything if I were to get the procedure to keep me alive afterwards, but they wouldn't actually cover the one thing that would guarantee my survival. And because of that, I did initially begin looking for health coverage, mostly out of pocket. And at that time, the monthly premiums that I was getting and receiving were anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 plus a month. And so we really had to sit down. Um, and about 6 months, 7 months after my initial diagnosis, um, we had made the decision, I had made the decision, and the majority of my family did, eventually everyone did come on board, but they respected my decision that I was just going to let it run its course. Um, that I would turn it over to the creator's hands and leave it be. Um, Manage what I could, maintain what I could, but ultimately was I had prepared myself to die. We had actually planned everything. Wow. And so going through, you know, that was a surreal moment. And for about 2 years, I really kept it very close to just those around me, my close friends and my close family. It wasn't until actually the beginning of this year, 2025, that I actually made a public post, kind of detailing what has been going on the last couple of years, um, and putting publicly what I had made my decision to be. Um, Fortunately, I had a very caring and very adamant and vocal primary care physician at the Absentee Shawnee Little Axe Clinic here in Norman. And while he respected my initial decision, he was like, well, I'm not going to stop fighting. And I was never, I was always ready to fight. But as you know, unfortunately, as I sat down um, and just did the math, it was going to be a lot cheaper for me to pay for a funeral than it was for me to try to pay for a transplant out of pocket. Or even, with $2,000 a month premium, $1,500 a month premium, it would ultimately still be cheaper for me just to have a funeral. And my primary care physician actually got me in touch with a patient advocate there at Little X. And through their diligence and persistence and a little bit of policy rewriting, in March or February, end of February, early March, we had found a plan that would cover health insurance, and that wouldn't cover the transplant. That was still a pretty penny, but was something that was much more manageable than $1,500 a month. And so I got on it, started in April. And at this point in time, I was seeing a specialist in Oklahoma City, roughly every 4 to 6 months, just to maintain. Because again, they had even told me when I first started seeing them, like, the transplant's really the only option you have. We can continue seeing you, but it's just going to be really to monitor my numbers and monitor, not to sound morbid, but monitor my time. Um, and so in May, I went back and we had the insurance then, and um, we decided to begin exploring a transplant. And so because this wasn't alcoholic cirrhosis, this was an autoimmune issue, and because of my blood type, they began to push things. And May I did my initial talks with the hepatologist and the transplant coordinators, and then was kind of put through the ringer with the medical evaluations in June, um, going through all the different medical testings to see if I was even a candidate for it. And then in mid-June, my case went before the transplant committee at Integris Baptist in Oklahoma City, and I was deemed a candidate. Um, and at the end, roughly around the early July 20th, somewhere around there, I officially went on the transplant list. And it was kind of surreal because again, up until that point, I was, you know, content with my decision. Um, and we kind of began through, and um, roughly a month later was actually the Friday before Labor Day, the Friday of Labor Day weekend. Um, I was actually planning on coming back home to spend it with some of my family, and I was packing up my truck, and I got a call, and they said we have an emergency situation. We have a possible match. We need you to get to the hospital right now. And so I went to the hospital, went through all of our pre-op tests and all this stuff. And then I was in a room. I was prepped. And unfortunately, they came in and the organ had begun to fail. It wasn't thriving as they wanted it to, and so the my surgeon decided not to go through with the surgery. And so this is what we come to learn that they call a dry run. And so was discharged immediately, and left, and um, yeah, it was kind of surreal to go through the process and be right there and then just go home. And so fortunately, almost a month to the day, a little over a month, I had gotten another call. It was October 3rd. And I got a call very early in the morning, and it was the transplant center. And they had told me, they said, well, we're not going to get your hopes up, but we are monitoring a situation, and we may potentially have um, an organ for you. And they said, so we're not calling you in yet. We're putting you on standby. Um, we will call you here later to give you more details. I think that was about 6:45 in the morning. And so, I didn't get my hopes up. And so I just went through like my normal morning. Um, and it was about 11:30 that morning. They called me in again. They said, well, we still don't know if it's going to be a full match, but we do want to go ahead and bring you in. And so they said, if you can start making you don't have to rush up here like last time. They said, but if you can within the next hour or two, start making your way to the hospital. And so I said, okay. And so um, I called my people who was part of. We had planned this. I had my team ready of close friends and family, and um, got me to the hospital and went through all of the pre-round tests, all the blood work. When I say all the blood work, we were laughing. I said I came here as a full blood. I'm not sure what I left as. Uh, at one point in time, there's like 20 some odd vials of blood just around, and I was like, well, I'm not sure what's left, but here we go. Um, but they came back in. They said we won't have an answer. This was roughly about 4 or 5 o'clock by this time. And I said we won't have an answer until about 10:30. And so, um, we just kind of waited around, and I didn't. post on social media the second time. I didn't send out anything to my other friends and family, just in case that this was going to be a second dry run. And it was about 10:35. Um, they the doctor came in, and I don't know. To me, I just knew they were just going to tell me the organ failed again. But they came in and she looked at me and they said, "It's a go. We're going to take your surgery scheduled for 1 o'clock in the morning." And from about 10:35, 10:40 to about 11:30, we spent. I kind of just sat there, but we were calling different people and letting them know. And then the surgical team came back and prepped me and took me back about 12:30. And I remember them wheeling me into the operating room right about 1. And then that was the last that I really remember. And they said it was roughly about a 5.5, 6 hour surgery. That would have been the morning of October 4th. And so from there, I was in the ICU, but the following Tuesday, I believe was October 7th, there was a few complications. And so well, from what I was told, my liver, there were two arteries that were actually siphoning blood away from the new liver. Because they had taken me off of, the majority of the things that were in me at the time. But I wasn't bouncing back, and that's when they had determined that the liver was actually losing blood because
Okay.
my body was siphoning it off to other areas, and so Tuesday night, a little bit before midnight, they had decided there were two options. The first option was, I believe it was called a um, arterial angioembolism or something like that, where
Okay.
they were going to go through my veins, my arteries, and try to embolize those two arteries that were kind of sapping the blood. Um, but unfortunately, one of the arteries that they needed to embolize was really close to the graft. And so the issue was they didn't know if they were going to be able to successfully do it through an artery because of how close and how weak those walls were because due to the transplant. And so they had told me everything, and they said there was a very, very, very high chance. Um, I want to say it was about 60 to 70% chance that they were going to have to reopen me back up. And they had already gotten another surgical team in place, an OR ready, that should they have to transfer me over. And so they took me back a little bit before midnight. But luckily, they had an incredible interventional radiology team, and they were successfully able to do it through the artery. And then once that happened, uh, I began to bounce back like they wanted. Unfortunately, though, with any situation like this, my body took a little bit longer to fully wake up, and so there was some small issues with my kidneys and things like that have since resolved. But spent a total of roughly, I think, 10 days in ICU, um, and then was moved to the regular floor and spent another 6 or 7 days on that floor before I was released. And I was released, I believe it was October 20th. A lot of my days
Yeah.
kind of melded together there, but was in the hospital for about 16 to 17 days total.
I
And so,
always saw you as a walking miracle, and you're one of my personal national treasures, Cherokee. So it just pins and needles as soon as I found out that you were having health issues and that was what was going on. Okay, so obviously you're with us, you've survived all that. Tell us how we can support you.
well, like I said, continued prayers are always, and thoughts are really everything that we need. But my close friends did end up convincing me to set up a GoFundMe to help cover various medical expenses and things like that. Because, like I said, I still am about a month or so out of being fully cleared, or not even fully cleared, but being able to return to normal activities. Um, and so we did set that up as a way to kind of help support me and the team that was around me with various, like, as in medical costs and stuff like that. So there's that way. But
No,
again,
and we're glad because I made a donation and we're going to include this in the article. People love you, Corey. We want to know how to help.
and
So,
like I said, if you are so inclined, that would be greatly appreciative. But again, the thoughts and prayers, that those are really what help too. I've had so many of my colleagues and friends and things reach out from everywhere, and they really do help. So anything I'm very appreciative for, and truly, truly appreciative because again, as a recipient, we really don't know much about the donor. But I do say this is that me and my family are extremely grateful because we do understand the cost of my life, and what that meant. And words cannot describe how grateful we are to that family, wherever they are, whoever they may be. We are truly grateful. And I I don't think any of us take this lightly because again, we understand what me being here, what that cost was. Not just a financial cost, but um, the other cost. And so we are eternally grateful to that family. And again, just as I've always asked, to keep me in your thoughts and prayers, I ask you to keep that family, again, whoever they may be, where we don't know, but just to keep them in your thoughts and prayers too, especially as we're going into this time of year. Um,
yeah, this will be their first Christmas without their loved one.
mhm.
Yeah.
And in
Well,
all honesty, this we didn't think I would live to see this Christmas. So as I said, I think it's very surreal in a way when we begin to sit down and think about it, and um, truly is a time just to be thankful, but also to be thoughtful and keep those in prayers.
well, I'm thankful you were willing to come on and do this story because we needed to tell it. Everyone wants to know that you're doing well, wants to know that you're doing awesome things. Um, are you still doing stuff with United Couture Band in the education department?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
good, because I'm so excited that you're over there. On a personal note, I know that this is something only people can decide for themselves with their loved ones, but I'm an organ donor. I believe in that, in giving somebody else a chance, and that's what it means for me, at least. And so, if you're someone that's listening and you haven't considered that, would you just be open to it? Talk with your loved ones so they'll honor your request, and hopefully, you're going to impact somebody like our Corey Still, or excuse me, Dr. Corey Still. So I know that again, you are one of my national treasures. I have my own list, not an official one, and you're on it. So, Corey, is there anything else that you want to share with everyone that might be listening?
definitely. As we go through here, I know sometimes it's hard for us, especially um, as Native people, we sometimes can be stubborn when it comes to our own health. But one of the things that I've learned through this process is don't be scared to ask questions. Don't be scared to have your physicians explain things to you. And if you don't understand it, tell them that. Um, what I have found, a lot of times, um, your physicians will go to bat for you. Roughly nine out of 10 times, you will have those in your corner that will advocate for you. But they don't know how to advocate for you unless you ask the questions or you tell them what's going on. And sometimes it may seem harmless. Um, Literally,
I think you fluid
my first
retention,
sign. Yeah,
right?
my first sign was just a little bit of swelling. Because in reality, I think what we found out is one of my main symptoms was fluid retention, and once they diagnosed me and put me on some preventative medication, I dropped about 200 pounds in a matter of 4 to 5 months, and that was all fluid retention. Um, and it accumulated in just a swelling in one of my legs, and that w was persistent. And that was one of the initial things that took me in. Um, and you know, I thought it was just going to be some simple issue, and I'm a little bit morbid. Turns out I was dying. So, um, and but
You've had more time to get comfortable with that than the rest of us, but I
I
appreciate the
have, I
Cherokee
have, I
humor.
have. Yes, my friends still get on me sometimes. But like I said, it's ask those questions. That's all I can
Amen.
say. Don't be scared to ask or tell what's going on. And even if it's not your physician, find someone who will advocate for you, a friend, a family member, a colleague, a patient advocate, a nurse. Um, find those people who you trust and that will advocate for you, and get the help you need. And don't take IHS no for an answer, because trust me, through this, I've had my roundabouts with IHS. I did have, we'll be candid, and we're on a 411 here, and I will be candid. I did go to um, for one of my complications earlier this year, actually. I think it was early April. Um, I had actually went in due to some complications from this, and was at home when this happened in Tahlequah, and went to Hastings, went to the emergency room, and um, was sent home. Was told there's nothing we can do. And if it hadn't been for some very persistent friends and family, who basically threatened us almost 7 foot full-blood Indian and was like, "Get in the car, we're taking you to Tahlequah City." I was actually admitted immediately in Tahlequah City and was there for about 5 or 6 days. And the ER attending that was there was mortified when she had found out that Hastings had sent me home in that condition. Um, and so that's why I said, it's while I am still an avid advocate of IHS, and still a recipient of IHS, sometimes, you have to be willing to stand up and fight and question. And like I
We
said,
have a lot of opportunity, Corey. I think that's fair to say to improve our healthcare inside the Cherokee Nation. I know UKB has a limited budget and is doing a lot of good things in behavioral health, but after that, it's us, it's Cherokee Nation. So, yeah,
so like I said, those would be my words of advice. I won't say words of wisdom because I don't know how wise I am. I might be wise something else, but I'm don't know if I'm wise in age. Um, so those would be my words of advice.
okay,
Don't be scared to say what's going on, and don't be scared to advocate and push back. Um,
yes,
and fight for what you need.
yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure. And thank you for sharing your stories so that others can, number one, know how Dr. Corey Steele is doing, but number two, learn from that to be their own advocate and that there's a path in what IHS does or doesn't do, and that they can still go to these patient advocates in these healthcare systems and probably get something done if they'll keep talking and communicate and advocate for themselves and for help others too. Sounds like. Well, Corey, thank you for being on with us. We're going to have a written story with this. And to our listeners out there, until we see you again, Wado.
Join the conversation. Discover stories and insights that matter to you. Subscribe to Cherokee 411 with Kara and stay connected with independent media. real, relevant, and unfiltered.